Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this special presentation on the disruption decade, how to leverage supply chain execution solutions to navigate ongoing uncertainty, presented by Made4Net. One quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, supply chain disruptions are sure to continue in 2023, even if the causes will be different than in years past. Businesses will be coping with geopolitical conflicts, inflationary pressures, a possible recession, extreme weather, and other issues yet to emerge. To succeed, they will need to build flexibility into their operations. So where to start? Today, we're going to talk about how to create better connectivity between planning and execution by focusing on warehouse and transportation improvements. We'll look at pain points across the supply chain and reveal strategies for creating the flexibility that you need to be prepared for any kind of supply chain disruption. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Amit Levy is Executive Vice President of Customer Solutions and Strategy at Made4Net. Amit leads Made4Net product incubation, oversees partnerships, and builds growth strategy. He brings over 25 years of experience in working with hundreds of customers. JP Wiggins is Vice President of Corporate Development at 3G TMS, managing channels and partnerships. He has previously worked at SAP and Descartes Systems Group and was co-founder and Senior Vice President of Logistics for Global Logistics Technologies, or GLOG, co-founder and vice president of product management at DXDT, and vice president of logistics at Wesley Software. Michael Wellwind is managing principal at Alpine Supply Chain Solutions. Michael has more than 30 years of supply chain experience, during which he has helped dozens of Fortune 500 companies develop and implement their supply chain strategies. He has also held top leadership positions with global software companies and private equity firms. Welcome all.
Well, thanks.
Now, before we get underway, I want to give us a quick rundown of what it is exactly we're going to be talking about today, the main discussion topics for the hour. We're going to talk about tips for minimizing disruptions, incredibly important at a time like this. We're going to learn to understand how TMS, Transportation Management System, and WMS, Warehouse Management Systems, synchronize. We're going to talk about tactics to address labor constraints. We're going to discuss building resilience and optimizing resources and reducing warehouse and transportation costs. So with that, let's move on to the panel, the portion of our presentation here. I'm going to be asking our panelists a series of questions. Let me start with this one. You know, for the past 2 years, as we all know, we've been dealing with capacity constraints, supply chain volatility, resource shortages. Now we're facing a potential recession. What advice do you have for companies looking to improve efficiencies within their supply chain and be better prepared for the future? And by the way, we know technology brings efficiencies, but it also costs money. Where else should companies be investing to see a short-term ROI? And what is a tipping point for making the decision to invest? I apologize for that compound question. That's a lot to pack into one. Michael, you get to answer it.
Well, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. It's interesting is, obviously warehouse management, transportation management solutions are the foundation of a good warehouse and operation. But a lot of our customers have them in place or are in the process of putting them in place, and they're trying to find some quick wins. We've seen slotting where you're properly sizing the 4-pick location and minimizing travel within the 4 walls is a quick win with 3 to 12 months as an ROI. And the other is actually labor management, whether it's short-term planning or long-term planning and getting the WMS to be able to actually look at the labor that you need to get the orders out the door by the 5 o'clock shutoff time. So
that's a good way to set the table for our discussion today. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Okay, so labor costs we know are often the largest expense in the warehouse. Now we have labor shortages on top of that and the need to maximize productivity with the people we have. What practical steps can companies take to improve productivity and labor efficiencies in the warehouse? Amit, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, sure, Bob. Well, I think everyone will agree that supply chain warfare today is based on the Generation Z, right? Young people that are looking for easy jobs. They prefer to stay home, make money in creating content on TikTok, and instead of just going to work in warehouses and picking cases. And COVID just made it worse. If you look at labor, it generally makes up 60-65% of the total cost of warehouse and fulfillment operations. And, we see that labor rates have increased 10-15% the past 5 years or so. And the overall DC productivity remains pretty flat. So the cost per unit, has ultimately increased. I think that most supply chain executives understand that, while they need to invest in human resources, they have to augment it with technology. So if I have a few tips, first, labor is still extremely important, and I think that it's important to hire right, to train the people, to give good feedback to the employees, incentives, track turnover, and so on and so forth, and always be able to measure it on a monthly and a weekly basis. Second, extremely important to prepare yourself for the future by examining, how you can implement automation and technology within your fulfillment operation. Create less dependency on human resources. This could, be in the area of selection, packing, storage, sortation, and so on and so forth. There are tons of technologies out there, and worth looking into those.
Okay, Michael, do you have some additional thoughts on that?
What's interesting is one of our taglines is make sure your clients get the most investment for their asset. A lot of times we'll walk in and at the end of a project, right? Time, money, resources, the triangle, you start to run out. And sometimes we find our customers haven't actually turned on all the functionality, whether it's directed put away or triggered replenishment. And sometimes it's just, turning on additional functionality in the asset you already own can help drive some labor efficiencies. In addition to the, work instruction and the standard operating procedures to make sure you have the right metrics in place.
Thanks. Well, most of our supply chains are run by a combination of disparate systems, each one managing a specific area. I wonder how you gain true visibility and intelligence across this hodgepodge of systems. JP, what do you think?
And this actually, bringing it back to the theme of the presentation, the decade of disruption. If you think about it, disruptions have always been, and there always will be disruptions, but why did this one seem to hit us hard? And if you think of the way for the past, well, forever, we've been focusing on integrating systems, usually around our ERP, within the four walls of our company. But now with the integrated supply chain, you need to be integrated not just within your own four walls, but across, I like to say, your entire ecosystem. So this is your customers, your vendors, your partners. You all need to be knowing. And so hindsight, what's going on at your vendors, your suppliers, and your customers is important to your own operation right now. And so that's why extending your network is, across your customers and suppliers is where really, this is where supply chain execution systems, that's what WMS and TMS is, that's where they really will come into play. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, we all know the possibility of disparate systems sub-optimizing one another. You get one right and it ends up sub-optimizing the other.
Because then if you think about like, most people are going to deal with orders and customers can talk to an orders, but if you're talking to a carrier, you're talking shipments. Orders and shipments are not a one-to-one, it's a many-to-many type of thing. And then if you're going to be dealing with your warehouse, so it's disparate systems that are looking at different types of centric things.
Sure. Well, JP is our transportation perspective for warehousing. Let's go to Amit on that question. How do you get true visibility and intelligence across these so-called disparate systems?
Yeah. So, Bob, many systems in today's world historically were built for linear supply chains, right? And with end-to-end supply chain visibility, information becomes siloed and creates unnecessary and confusing segmentation. You look 10 years back, most of the systems were all around having and offering analytics dashboard. And you provide information about your operation, but you can't see the overall operation. And the warehouse is just one link within the execution. It's a pretty important one. Historically, visibility in the warehouse was all about discrete logistics concern. Do you have, just to give you an example, do you have enough inventory? Are your orders in the proper status of their fulfillment, right? Do I need to order more product or manufacture more? Now, we see much more in the warehouse. Customers can see, when I talk about customers, it could be consumers, could be companies that buy from us. They can see more about the product. Has it shipped? When it's going to be delivered, which was pretty straightforward. If you look in the back, but you could also see what's the status on the floor. Hasn't been picked, hasn't been packed. What exactly in the process that product is at. And as a matter of fact, and this is just, to provide some additional insight, systems today can actually provide more data on just as an example, what bot or what robot, right, specifically is handling that order and what stage in the process it is. What can I add to that? A lot of system in the mix. Many blind spots are created in today's supply chain. And when you build visibility and connect systems, you just provide a better way to manage your operation and ultimately gain, just exceptional customer service. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, well, we all know visibility is essential, but for so many years, supply chains prioritized cost, efficiency, productivity. And the last 2 or 3 years, they've learned that there's something else they need to be thinking about very seriously, and that is resilience. So I'm wondering, what is the link between visibility and resilience? Like, how do these integrated supply chain execution systems help real-time visibility across the supply chain actually bolster supply chain resilience? JP?
The key is workflow. You can't just have visibility and actionable intelligence, that you actually have workflow to work on that visibility. I mean, if you got 10,000 shipments happening out there, what good does that do you to know where those 10,000 are, unless you actually have a system that's going to work on those, to manage those exceptions and try to correct things. So, before this call, Amit and I were talking about, like, on inbound visibility is a really key thing for, like, on warehouse, like what he was just talking about, being able to understand what's available to ship. Well, if it's shipping on Thursday, there might be, 20 pieces of product available, but because of the inbound, if it ships on Friday, it might be able to do a full order. So seeing the inbound, and as it relates to labor, is important. So, like, on the transportation side, have your TMS talk to your WMS so that your inbound inventory is synced up with what's actually in transit. Does that make sense?
I think so. Amit, what do you think? You got a perspective on that?
Yeah, no, definitely agree with what JP said. I'm going to use an example. I'll start my, my response to this question, Bob, by stating an interesting comment that I read from IBM, one of the blogs that they published, and I'll just read it out. It's basically supply chain resiliency is characterized by the ability to see what's happening, which is really visibility, quickly analyze those events or data, which is intelligence, and then, to properly respond, which is the agility, right? To have the proper systems into it. Yeah. Do we have visibility, and how vulnerable is our supply chain to these disruptions? Can we see these things in real time and develop, and be able to proactively respond to these actions and be more, provide better solutions for our customers? And I'll give you just a quick example, and I'm sure everybody on this webinar have experienced something similar. Think about it this way. You go into a website, you order a pair of Nikes, and with a next day delivery. 2 hours later, you realize that you just want a different color, right? You pick blue and you want, red. You go into the website, you make a change, but you get a message that the order is already processed. And the order is already processed means you have to wait until it arrives, process a return, get a refund, and so on and so forth, and then order a new pair. Think about it this way. In today's supply chain, the resiliency and the ability to, to really in real time respond to your customer needs and ever-changing requirements is huge. So in a new world now, you'd be able to respond to that change request. You know exactly what the status of the order is, where it's in the warehouse. Can I go back? Can I reverse the pick? Can I go back and pick the original color? Oh, I'm sorry, not the original color, but the alternate color that the customer pick and ship it? Yes. And what do you get with that? You get a happy customer, you get no returns, lower cost. And you can easily compete against Amazon, which, really dictates a lot of the standards that, all distribution companies face. So, just a better way to address the customer's requirement and expectations.
But in terms of visibility within the warehouse, it's not only real time, it's dynamic visibility too, isn't it? Because nobody is going along with the so-called set it and forget it slotting, because the locations of things in the warehouse change all the time in line with customer demand. So are we talking indeed about a system that can keep up?
Absolutely. Not only that, it can proactively respond to all these events that take place, right? You configure those systems today, and when you do have the visibility, you can properly set it up. A lot of it is about, just getting the right data in place and having the systems learn from that data. A lot of it is around artificial intelligence today. When we look about technologies that are in warehouse and supply chain, a lot of what's driving those technologies today is artificial intelligence.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to ask a question. I guess I would call this the Goldilocks question. And here it is. We've shifted, as you know, inventory management methods from just in time to just in case. How do we get just right? What do supply chain leaders need to do to better manage inventory accuracy and availability? That's you, Michael.
It's a daunting dilemma, right? So the ports are closed, we can't get it. Now the ports are open, keep it coming. I can't fit it in my facility. And it's going to be a mix. I'll give you a great example. We had a customer that moved 50% of their manufacturing to Mexico, thinking with, alternative sourcing, let's go near shore. And the manufacturing team's like, woo, we're going to save $10 a unit. And the transportation team goes, how much is that going to cost now that we have 50% coming from south of the border? Oh, it's going to cost us $6 a unit. We're only going to net $4. Luckily, the SVP of supply chain had his head on a swivel and was able to defend his position, or else he would have gotten gobbled up with the transportation costs. So right now, I think everybody's got the S&OP and the optimization, and they're trying to work on that. But there's also a different philosophy that says, I never want to be out of stock. So I'll take a third-party logistics firm, or I'll use some outside storage for this surplus. So I think it's a daunting dilemma. There's a lot of software out there trying to optimize and make sure your inventory is right. We've got a lot of clients that the product is only in and out in 45 days using dynamic slotting within the facility. On the flip side, you get other customers that are like, I'm just going to take all the inventory because if I have it, my competition's not going to have it, and then I'll be able to sell it. So I'm not sure what right is. I think we're going to have to wait 18 to 24 months and let, things settle down a little bit and see exactly, if there's, some sort of other methodology that we're going to use with artificial intelligence, machine learning to try and improve the inventory optimization.
Well, again, maybe it's dynamic, maybe it's a moving target, but at least you're looking for it, as opposed to this pendulum that swings one way or another. It says, "Oh my goodness, we ran out of stock during the during the last 3 years. We'd better just clog up the pipeline with inventory to make sure that never happens again." Well, no one's going to do that, but at the same time, they're going to have to do something different than what they've done before. So thanks, Michael, for that answer. Okay, so how do individuals and organizations, and speaking of investments and bottom line in numbers, because no matter how much we're talking about the improvements to be gotten from these solutions, we have to justify the investment. How do individuals in an organization prove the ROI of a new WMS or TMS to the management team? Amit.
Yeah. So, if we look at a just purchasing a new WMS and not replacing it, but start with purchasing, the typical ROI talks about labor savings. It talks about inventory accuracy, ability to fulfill your orders on time, customer service, and so on and so forth. But now you're talking about replacing a system and, putting in a new system in place where you already have one. So a lot of the companies that do have WMS, these could be pretty, old systems, primitive systems that, just lag behind, right? I mean, they bought those systems 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and the technology is old, no innovation. When you look about optimization, integration capabilities, not all systems have that. And so a lot of the WMS systems offer, core basic WMS functionality, which is really receiving, picking, put away, and so on and so forth. So when you use those old systems, you find yourself behind with competitors. You find yourselves behind with the ability to meet, compliance requirements or any other regulation. Just as an example, in today's world, think about all the security challenges and compliance with GDPR and SOC and so on and so forth. This is big. This is huge. It's becoming a really big concern. And these are just examples of where systems have to be replaced and have to be upgraded. Not to mention the fact that if you put in a more modern system and a more robust WMS with some advanced functionality such as task optimization and labor optimization and things that are really driven by business rules, you can proactively and respond to your customers' requirements really fast, not having to go in and make all these changes. This all comes down to dollars. One other perspective in today's world is that everything is going cloud. So you'd be surprised to see that sometimes it's less expensive to just replace the system and go to a cloud-based environment. You'd be engaging in a 36-month term a contract, which will be much cheaper or less expensive than just upgrading your system. And we see this a lot. Customers that are looking to replace their systems, they found out that it's extremely expensive. So there are a lot of options out there.
JP, what do you think?
Yeah, adding on to that, on the TMS world, it's even using the cloud as an example. What most shippers and manufacturers and retail spend 10% of revenue on their transportation. We still see putting in a multimodal, non-asset based TMS to rate shop customers, to manage rate quotes, to get new quotes, to bring in new 3PLs and optimize freight. We still see 8 to 10% reduction of that freight bill. That is still the standards that we're seeing today. Costs of these systems have literally, in the past 10 years, they're like nothing compared to what they used to be 10 years ago. Your implementation times also, a cloud-based TMS full service, you're talking less than a month now for your initial go live, sometimes as low as 2 weeks to bring these in, because they really are, if you're dealing with standard ERPs, you have integration with WMS. I mean, you can literally put these things in and then and here's the advantage is that your connectivity to your carriers, you have API connectivity to your carriers, and it becomes this central rallying point along your transportation provider. So your ROI and your TMS may actually drive your entire project. And I'm going to throw this out there. We hadn't talked about this, but if you have a sustainability initiative at your organization, there's no better thing that you can do that's going to reduce your carbon footprint than to put in a TMS. It's going to drop your carbon footprint because you're going to look for mode shift. Your consolidating orders and mode shift right there are going to save more carbon foot pounds than any other thing that you have going on, guaranteed. So, it's a factor. It's an incredible factor. So, so look at that from an ROI, not just from a cost perspective, but, sustainability, improving your transportation and make it integrate with your warehousing system, make it integrate with your planning. That's going to be probably the largest sustainable project that you can put together.
Michael, what do you think?
I might be a little confrontational, right? You got a WMS vendor and transportation provider here, but JP, you tell me the day that they're going to choose a transportation lane on sustainability versus service, and I'll be really surprised, right?
No, that ain't going to happen, but they're going to do it on cost. And if you do it from like parcel to LTL mode shift, that's a huge jump. LTL to truck, that is a massive shift.
No, I'm in, but if you're going to, manage your transportation on sustainability, sign me up. Let's go figure it out. On the flip side,
will fall cost though. 80% cost and sustainability and transportation are generally aligned. So, and consolidation is a no-brainer. So anyway,
I hear you. Now, there's no doubt. There's no doubt transportation, you're going to save money. And believe it or not, some of the ROIs that we see is the increase in a service, right? I want 98% next day service. So I get that. On the flip side, I've probably done 80 different WMS installs. And Amit, I know you're talking about the cloud and speed to value, but I got to tell you what, 50% of our installs are still on-prem. Guess what? This is a blue collar system. If you don't ship, people lose their jobs. So they're like, I don't care if I have a box in the corner, and I don't care if I have to, upgrade it every 4 years. I don't have a dedicated T1 line. my warehouse is in the middle of nowhere. I'm not confident that my team understands cloud and technology and communication. So, I totally believe that there's an ROI for a TMS in less than 9 to 12 months. And I've seen anywhere between 20 and 40% productivity gain by using a real-time warehouse management system. So I'm fans. I just have a little different perspective. That's all.
Thanks, Michael. I do encourage people to Google Gartner's 7 questions to make the case for a new WMS, because they summarize it quite nicely too. Okay, so I guess this is sort of follows. We've sort of covered a little bit of this, but I want to just hit home with it. And that is, what are the benefits of an integrated TMS WMS? Amit.
Yeah, so integration is a big word. I mean, a lot of people, when they hear integration and they hear that you need to hook up those systems together to get better data and better processes and so on, they freak out. But it's pretty simple. And especially in today's world, when we don't have to deal with flat files, and we don't have to deal with database connection. There's just standard APIs. And it's pretty straightforward, fast, and so on. So, at the end of the day, when technologies communicate with one another, you get better data, and you get a value add to your actionable intelligence. That's where it really comes down to. That when you integrate WMS and TMS, the data sharing between those 2 systems is extremely important, and it augments your ability to do better procurement, to do better manufacturing, warehouse process, distribution. Just as an FYI, in a warehouse, a 2-hour delay from a carrier can dramatically change the day. You're looking at when you can see those delays in advance, you can just proactively work and do things to minimize its impact. Labor can be planned better. You focus on the picking of the right orders and not the ones that are being delayed. Door utilization is higher. Outbound staging areas can be better utilized and be more productive. At the end of the day, again, comes down to having better data and leads to just better planning and better execution.
Thanks. JP, what about this question of integration benefits?
Yeah, just adding on to that. I mean, if you think about it, supply chain execution is where you really where you physically perform your service to your customer. It's where your customers get your product. It's where they receive your product. It's how they receive it. So it is the ultimate end goal of your business. The integration makes it a lot possible for doing a few things, such as, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, being able to do that color tennis shoe that was incorrect. Well, let's say you're a business customer and you're buying pallets of chemical pallets of productized pallets or something, and you need to change or add to that order. Having an integrated system allows you to see, well, where's it at in the warehouse? Has it shipped yet? Well, if it's shipped, is it still on the yard? Can I pull that back? Can I add to that order? Can I subtract from that order? Maybe I need to do an inventory shift. Maybe I have inventory sitting in a warehouse in Denver versus a warehouse in Houston. How can I actually take advantage of that better informational flow to make better decisions for my customers and allow more flexibility? And that's what we're seeing now in this just decade of disruption is, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know where your inventory is, but the more you have that information where it is, the better decisions you can make tactically on today's actual your run and your execution for today.
Yeah, again, this concern about resilience, it's really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the first piece of advice that you give to people who are looking for fast improvements? I mean, everybody's very impatient. It's got to happen quickly. Fast improvements to their supply chain network. Michael.
It's interesting. Everybody asks, what's some quick wins? What's some quick wins? When's the last time you put your, transportation out the bid? Right now, the market's a little soft. You could probably pick up a little bit on your TL, not as much on your LTL, but definitely on your parcel as well. So, that's a quick win. But the big thing is, I think establish a baseline, right? What are your current costs? So that way, if you do make any improvements, you get value, you get credit for it. Number one. Number two, what is your current service levels? And if you do make a change, how can you actually get credit for that? Because what's happening is, a lot of our customers are actually doing distribution network analysis because now they have an alternative source. So they're not just coming in on the West Coast, they're coming on the East Coast. And then how do I actually get the right inventory to the right DC at the right time? So distribution network analysis, we've got a lot of those happening right now because of this alternative sourcing. So establish a baseline, put the metrics in place, look at, putting your transportation out and look at how each of the alternatives are going to improve your transportation and your service.
No discussion of warehouse technology these days can go without a very quick mention of robotics, of AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. How do they fit into the mix? Amit?
Sure. Great question. And I think that, we all agree that this is a growing market. When you look at automation in warehouses, it's been out there for the past 4 decades. It just had a different name. We called it material handling. But in the past 10 years, I think 10 years is a fair timeline. We've seen more smart robots. And smart robots are the ones that are now growing in warehouses. In the past, you had AGVs, auto-guided vehicles, right? These would typically move pallets and replace man forklifts. And now you see this going into a more discrete function that our AMRs bring into the warehouse mix. So, you pick a pallet with an AGV, you move it to a staging area, and then a transit AMR, a transportation AMR, picks it up and moves it from one location to another. And you're just, saving labor, and you're allowing the workers that you have, which, is one of our biggest challenges in today's world, and having shortage in labor, you allow them to do things that are more, valuable. Another area where you see growth in AMRs is the fulfillment AMR. So you're looking at companies or bots like Locus or Geek Plus that there are just bots that support the picking process, or you see AutoStore, which are solutions that enable goods to person. Each one of those in its own world adds value to the fulfillment operation. Now, there are also other AMRs in the area of inventory control and visibility. If it's drones or bots that are based on video processing technologies, these just give you better inventory control, counting capabilities, and so on and so forth. So this is really, where the market is going. It's really growing. And when you take all that and add additional layer of technology, there is a new term today that's called, multi-agent orchestration platform. It's basically a software that can look at all these different type of automation components that live, for lack of a better term, in a warehouse and operate in a warehouse, and it can synchronize them and can optimize the usage of all these bots and technologies in a more productive way. So, it could be automation, it could be bots, and it can even be, assets like elevators or conveying systems in the warehouse, where you just add that to the mix, but you have one platform that manages all this. This is really, just exciting times where it pertains to warehouse automation technology.
For sure. So many exciting options there to pick and choose from. Parcel is, in the age of e-commerce, parcel is the name of the game these days. How do I improve parcel in my operations, JP?
Oh, that's an easy one. So it's planning and rate shopping. And when I say planning, I'm talking upfront at the order take time during your planning process, is to keep scanning your orders, because there you can consolidate, determine your mode, optimize your shipments while it's still in planning, even before it drops to the WMS. So consolidation, having a TMS that's able to do that allows that customer, if they make 2 or 3 or 4 orders within the same time frame, then they are consolidated. I mean, it's absolutely frustrating to me when I see 4 different shipments hit a dock and they're 4 different moves. And it happens. It's still, major manufacturers and shippers are still doing this. Consolidate your orders, get a good planning system in place. That's a beautiful thing a TMS can do for you up front. And then when I say rate shopping, on that warehouse floor, when that parcel line hits, you need a rate shop system. Just don't have, UPS World Ship and FedEx World Ship or whatever they call it, have a true planning system that's a rate shop system that's going to ping all your different carriers and find the best carrier for that specific shipment. So that's what, having an embedded parcel system that's embedded into your TMS is important. So planning, rate shopping.
Yeah,
Something like
given
that.
what's happened to parcel rates over the last few years and the way they're calculated too, boy, that's super important now
Well,
more
and then
than
they
ever.
run out of capacity. I mean, FedEx and
Yeah.
UPS are the big whales in the industry, but there's 50, 100 other smaller last mile providers out there. You want to start using them? Well, get a good parcel system that's going to have API connectivity to different carriers, and you're going to be able to open up more capacity. Because what happens when UPS says they're not going to pick up your shipment today? I mean, FedEx did this to some 2,000 of their customers. They said this during COVID. They said, "Hey, we're not picking up your shipments. We're at capacity." So
Yeah,
what do you do?
you can almost count on it during any given peak season.
Yeah.
At some point, those two giants are going to say no to somebody, and
Exactly.
you have to do something about it. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so another one of the great debates in this whole area is on-premises versus cloud. Which provides the lowest cost of ownership over a 5, 10, 15-year period? Michael?
Pretty simple. 5-year total cost of ownership, it's going to be the cloud. What we typically do is a 5, 10, and a 15-year ROI. So when we go out, we look at the requirements, we do the high level budget, put the WMS and TMS kind of in place. The TMS has been in the cloud, and it's great, right? I don't think there's any issue with that. On the WMS side, I mentioned earlier, about 50% of our customers are actually staying on-prem, but they know that they have to make equipment investment. And so the year about 7.5, 8 is the tipping point where the cloud isn't the lowest total cost of ownership. It pivots to the actual on-prem. Now, if you think about it, WMS is pretty sticky. It's typically a 8 to 15-year investment. So depending on where you're at in your overall strategy, 5-year or less, cloud, 7.5, 8 years is the tipping point where being on-prem is going to be a lower total cost of ownership over a 10-year period.
Boy, I didn't expect such an exact question. Thank you. That's a lot of good information and nuance. Before we get to audience questions, and we have a lot of them, I just want to wrap up this panel portion of our presentation by asking each of you your top supply chain predictions for the next 3 to 5 years. Amit?
Yeah. So, I'm gonna start with data. Data. You build data. This is the infrastructure. That's the basic for everything else. Putting in technologies, putting in better visibility, predictive analytics, and so on and so forth. The second one is what we just talked about, automation. We're going to see a lot of automation. We're going to see a lot of growth in that space, in robots, in software synchronization and orchestration software that will control all these components and just make it more efficient. And finally, sustainability. Companies will continue to spend on services and technology just with the objective to lower carbon footprint, lower consumption of power, and so on. So, these are the things that I really think we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years.
Good. JP, top predictions.
Yeah, because we're so integrated world now, disruptions are going to become more volatile and more frequent. Like pricing, you're going to see for transportation, pricing for truck, ocean, warehousing, container, air price, pricing for warehousing, pricing for fulfillment. The boom and bust cycles are now already happening multiple times a year, and we're going to continue to see that. So you got to stay flexible. I mean, that's my big prediction is these disruptions, because we are such an integrated world. It isn't just what happens to your own supply chain. It's what's happening to your ecosystem or the whole, greater economy in general, that, it affects everybody. The whole butterfly effect really is taking over right now.
Great. Michael?
Number one, those that didn't make the investment in the direct to consumer, or call it the Amazon effect, they're playing catch up. So we still have a bunch of customers that are working on their direct to consumer strategy. Number two, because of the new sourcing, people are looking at distribution network analysis, inbound, outbound transportation, where should my DCs be, and what was the inventory level within there. And then number three, goods to person technology. So if you've got a long tail, a goods to person technology versus if you're doing a lot of different e-commerce orders, a mini shuttle service that we're seeing. We've got 7 customers implementing those right now. So those are the big things that we're going to continue to see.
Okay, those are some great insights. And in fact, all those questions, you guys did a great job of answering all of them. Thank you so much. I do want to move to the audience question and answers. Again, audience is very active and very involved today. We've got a lot of good questions. As we're answering them, though, you are invited to continue to submit your questions by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can, time permitting. So each of these questions, we're just going to throw them out and see who wants to grab, and we'll see if we can get some good answers. This questioner says, I visited dozens of suppliers around the world and could not still find suppliers that provide great visibility to us. What is missing? Investments, good management, etc. What?
I can start off on that one. What I see for visibility is people put in the great visibility systems. There's some good solutions out there, Project 44, 4Kites, 10-4. There's a few different ones. But where things fall apart is that when you're dealing with an outside supplier and transportation gets involved, like I talked about, that relationship between orders and shipments, things fall apart for companies because it is a many-to-many relationship. You have orders, you have order lines, and you have shipments. You may have many order lines on one shipment, or you have many shipments on one order line. So things fall apart when you're doing the visibility, when you may know where your truck is, you may know where your container is, but that doesn't translate to where your orders are at. So how do you get around that? And I think that's why you have to have a good supply chain execution system model, a good WMS, a good TMS that's integrated, where you have a way to translate between orders and shipments and feed that back to your ERP to feed it across your ecosystem. So you have to look at visibility as not just within your four walls. You have to look at it across your ecosystem. And that's really one of the big things that a TMS brings to the table, is to be able to translate between those two, between shipments and orders.
If it's not outside, go on, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to add to JP's comment here. I totally agree. I think that the important piece here is the foundation of the execution system, right? To have a strong foundation of your business applications, of your supply chain execution platform, and the data. And this is how you can build a really good supply chain visibility layer on top of those systems to get the data that you need and proactively respond to those events that happen in real time.
If you don't have visibility outside your four walls, you don't have visibility.
Right.
It comes down to it. Yeah. Okay, here's a question. It's interesting how we interpret this question. The question is, how do you design the supply chain for conflicting goals? Now, the questioner doesn't specify what those goals might be. Maybe it's transportation versus warehousing optimization. Maybe it's cost savings versus the need to keep the pipeline stuff with inventory.
Sustainability versus cost, right, Michael?
Maybe it's everything. I don't know. Michael, help us out here. What might be some of these conflicting goals, and how would you design the supply chain to accommodate them?
It's what we do every day, right? You got 4 assets: space, equipment, labor, and control. The control is the systems. So if you're in a rural area and you want to stay in the city of Chicago because they're giving you a phenomenal tax break and you've got a small square footage, you're going to have to invest in automation and technology. So your equipment cost is going to go up. On the flip side, if you're building a brand new facility in Seymour, Indiana, and you got plenty of space, you're going to solve that problem differently. So that's the one thing I love about this job. I take the data and decades of experience, and then depending on what that one unique asset is, whether it's limited space or limited people or limited equipment, you solve the problem differently for each scenario. So it's never an exact science. It's more of an art. And that's why I love what we do.
There's just no stumping this guy. Thank you. Okay. Examples of artificial intelligence in use in actual operations. And I'm going to emphasize that word actual, because as we know, everyone's talking about AI right now. Where is it really being seen? Maybe Amit could help us with that one to start off with. And if you,
sure. I mean, when we look at the warehouse, and I'll focus on the warehouse side, and maybe JP can add any color on the transportation. We see AI in packing. So you see systems today that provide you good tracking and packing monitoring processes with using video processing and using AI, where they can, really monitor and check and see what the packer is doing. The same applies to picking. We also see things that like, AI running into the forklifts, movement of forklifts within the warehouse, again, using video processing to, identify obstacles, to identify certain risks within the warehouse floor that could be, just used as a guideline to where the warehouse workers are flowing. Some of that data is fed back into the WMS. So we get that data, and then we can use some of the data to optimize the routes within the warehouse in the space. And there's a lot more. I mean, the whole process of the AMRs in the warehouse, that's all AI driven. The optimization of those bots and moving them from one area to another, that's all driven by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, on the TMS side, we're using a lot. We're seeing it for pricing of truckload is where it really has taken off in the past year or so. And what I mean by that is that there's so much data out there. There's so many load boards and brokerages. And how do you know this? When you actually do a price, an AI could actually sense this data and tell you, hey, that's a good price, or that's not a good price. So, and give you confidence in that level better now than a human can usually. So, or better than a human that has less than 5 years of experience. That's kind of the level that we're at right now. So the AIs are as good as a human with 5 years experience. But then, but it's the AI for there. And then we're also seeing it now, we're using it for capacity management. So a bunch of empty trucks out there, how do you actually price them and then source those trucks? So pricing and capacity manager, two of the big things that we're seeing that kick up. I mean, obviously in TMS, there's always been machine learning where things, help themselves out, but I really wouldn't call that AI. But what we're seeing in pricing and capacity management, I would truthfully call AI.
Yeah. Used to be, if only we had the data. That's not the problem anymore. The data is there.
Yeah.
It's just what you do with it.
Yeah.
Question about labor. And this is a good one because I come upon this all the time in the stuff we work on Supply Chain Brain, and that is with labor shortages across the globe. And despite increased levels of automation, we still need people. What is the profile of an attractive and productive and good warehouse employer? How do you make your employees happy beyond just giving them more money, which we all know is not the final answer? How do you create a warehouse environment that can keep, can retain, can encourage an employee to stay with you and do good work? Who wants to jump on that one right now?
I'll take that, Bob. What we tell our customers is you don't have a labor shortage, you got a pay shortage, right? So how bad do you really, really want the people? Number one. So if you're in a competitive market, we've seen people where, you get $20 if you're on time per day. And if you do all 5 days in a row, you get another $100 bonus at the end, right? So it's small little wins to help incentivize them to be on time every day and then to be there for 5 days in a row. On the flip side, invest in your people like you want them to leave, but treat them like family so they don't leave. So are you allowing them to take, masters in supply chain classes or, personal and professional development at a local university? Are you allowing or rewarding time off? What's important to them? Is it money? Is it time with family? Is it a flex schedule? So one of our customers in Chicago just built an e-commerce facility, and they're working 4 10s that rotate, and they have 2 shifts a day. And they thought they were going to have a challenge finding labor during the holiday season. They didn't have any problem at all because, their significant other works 1 shift and they work the other shift, and they're able to spend quality time with their kids because they're working 4 days a week and they have 3 days off. So you just got to find what's right for your team and be open to different incentives, drive different behaviors.
Okay. This is an interesting question because it's asked who's driving the bus in a warehouse these days, technology or people. It says, what % of processes are defined by systems and what % of processes are defined by people? What's the balance there? Amit, you're smiling. I'm going to make you answer that question.
It's a good question. I think it's a hybrid, and without the systems, you can't drive the processes, and without the people, you can't set up the systems and make it more efficient. If I have to put in an educated guess, I would say 30% is about the people, and then 70% is about the systems. And it's really about driving the work and driving the activities and the processes within the warehouse. You have to do a good job in setting up your systems and putting in all the business rules and, setting up the locations in the warehouse and the zones and defining the teams that you have, and set up all the priorities and so on. But once it's set up, once it's working, then the system is just running, 70, 80% of the day-to-day activity. And all you have to do is just proactively, run the operation by looking at events and alerts and things. So manage it by, a little bit by the exceptions, because the rest is managed by the system itself. So that would be my take on that.
Okay, thanks. What are the main factors leading to a successful WMS implementation from your point of view? Michael.
Don't automate what you do today. I think a lot of our customers hire us specifically because they want to take advantage of best practices and lay on top of that the technology to allow their team to execute it within the four walls. So number one, the design, don't design exactly what you're doing today. Put in place direct to put away, put in place opportunistic cross stock, put in opportunistic cycle count. So let's get that best practices, number one. Number two, end user training. So work instructions, standard operating procedures are the foundation for the acceptance testing and the end user training. We just had a go live over the weekend, and the COO basically said most successful go live he's ever seen in his 20-something year career, because we test, and we train. And those are the two that usually get snubbed at the end when you run out of time and money. But if you hold the line and you train and you test, you're going to have a successful go live, as long as the design up front is taken into account best practices.
Great, thank you. Okay, here's one of everyone's favorite little technology words these days, blockchain. What is the panel's view of blockchain to help with supply chain disruption? Any takers on that one?
I still think blockchain is a technology in search of a solution for supply chain execution. I think at some point there might be something that comes up, especially when we talk that ecosystem. It's a great way to communicate across multiple partners, but yet practically it's just still a lot of thought and not practical application.
Okay, well, that was a short and sweet. Anthony, Albeit, do you have anything to say about that too?
Yeah, no, I think that some of the things that I've seen in blockchain, or at least where they're starting to evolve, is in traceability, and specifically in the area of foods. So when you look at farm to table, from the growers all the way to the end, when it comes to the end consumer, we see some technologies that surround blockchain that addressing traceability in that space.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, I hate to say it, but we are all just about out of time. We have time for just one final question, and I'm going to pose it to each member of the panel. You've been talking about many long-term initiatives. If you could take one action today to make a difference in your supply chain, what would it be? Amit?
One thing, I do everything I can for sustainability, implementing processes, technologies, with the objective to optimize labor, optimize working hours, space, get more efficiency on power usage, less usage of plastic, and so on and so forth. And even if we go a little bit beyond that, fuel consumption, transportation side. So that's really where, I see it all coming down to.
JP?
It's simple for me. Put in a cloud-based TMS so that you can consolidate, optimize during planning, automate your execution, and then solve that order shipment problem that is stopping us, so you can actually create actionable data.
Thank you. Michael?
I'm going to exceed expectations. I'm going to go with two. Number one, put your transportation out to bid. And number two, reslot your warehouse.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, what a great presentation. Thank you for all your insights. My only regret is that we were not able to get to all of our audience questions, but those that we didn't get to, I'm sure that our panelists would be only too happy to address them offline. Anyway, again, I want to thank our great speakers for today and thank our audience for attending. Here are 3 URLs that you can access, and with each of these URLs, you can find more information about each company, and it will also be sent to you via a follow-up email where more, again, more details about what we've learned today and what each of these companies can do for you to help you achieve the goals that we've talked about in this presentation. So audience members, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your great questions. Amit, Michael, JP, thank you for your time as well. And everybody, have a great day.